Janet Yellen meeting with the Senate Finance Committee this week, where she'll talk the president's fiscal budget and will likely face questions just about that, about the response to the collapse of SVB. Joining us now to discuss this, Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana. Senator Cassidy is also on the member of the Finance Committee, so perfect timing. Thank you so much, Senator, for joining us. Your first question to Secretary Yellen on Friday, what's it going to be?
Well, by the time I ask a question, I think 6 other people will have asked about Silicon Valley Bank. So I'll probably ask about Social Security, which I think Social Security is the Silicon Valley Bank of the retirement system. It's got a lot of liabilities, its assets are inadequate, and so far people have been asleep at the switch in terms of how do we address that. Now, if I do happen to be there first and answer about Silicon Valley, it'll be precisely that. People in the private market knew that there was excess obligation relative to asset. Their investment portfolio was bad. And so why was an intervention not done previous to when it actually was? I'm told if you looked at their financials, you could see in December of last year that SVB was not going to survive. But it took until March to kind of lower the hammer. Why until March? Why wasn't there a bridge bank set up beforehand? There's questions to ask about SVP, and I'd ask the same questions about Social Security.
Well, from the Now What file, Senator, I wonder your thoughts on the Federal Reserve meeting next week. Sherrod Brown, your colleague, Democratic colleague from Ohio, told us there should be no hike next week. So what becomes the priority now? Dealing with the aftermath of SVB or keeping focus on fighting inflation?
I think there's going to be a lot of flux. The reporter before me said a lot can happen in a week, or maybe Anne-Marie said that. A lot can happen over this next week. And as it's in a flux, the electromagnetic field doing, ooh, what's going to happen between now and then? I think the decision will go then.
I'm interested in what you want to talk to Secretary Yellen about in terms of Social Security, because you are talking a lot about this investment fund idea you have to make sure that Social Security remains solvent out from longer than a decade, which many say it's going to dry up in time. What exactly does this investment fund look like?
Well, it would be a fund separate from Social Security with a diversified portfolio. It is how every company, almost every country with long-term obligations is currently addressing those obligations. Again, separate from social, the risk is borne by the government, if you will, by the fund, and not by the beneficiary. And it's an approach, if you will. Nothing's final because we have not yet got everybody on board. The point is, you don't want to wait till the last minute. We saw with SVB that people who were kind of able to look at financials saw in December they were in trouble, but the administration or the Fed or the FDIC waited until March. We can see 9 years from now, according to CBO, there's going to be a 24% cut in people's Social Security benefits, people who are already receiving. We can look at those financials now. Let's do something now to correct the situation. Let's not wait until 9 years from now.
Senator, you've been very critical of the Biden administration's energy policy, particularly when it comes to permitting. You and I have had a few animated discussions about that. We just had a conversation with the Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm. She talked about the need to be energy independent. Listen to how she put it.
We need to be able to be energy independent. We need to be able to produce the means to our own energy security. And part of that energy security is growing the energy pie, and that means growing the clean side so that we have a larger energy pie as we transition.
Senator, did the administration make the right call on the Willow project? And did you write that statement for her?
Almost. One, they are making the right call, and she certainly starts to sound like a Republican. And I will say, she is saying basically what I've been saying for several years now. There is a
Sounds
nexus.
like it.
Yeah, it really does. There's a nexus between your national security, your economy, your energy supply, and emissions. Because the United States has turned its back on North American energy produced with our environmental standards, we've been forced to turn to other countries for energy supply with their environmental standards. Global emissions have worsened, our economy, relatively speaking, weakened, and jobs that could have been here are instead being created in Venezuela. Now, nothing against the Venezuelans, but I want those jobs in Louisiana, in my country, for my workers, not elsewhere. She's, you know, it's kind of like they were mugged by reality, and now they've woken up and they sound like a Republican.
But aren't you getting what you want, Senator Cassidy, with huge LNG deals in Louisiana?
Say that one more time.
Aren't you getting what you want with huge LNG, liquefied natural gas deals coming out of Louisiana?
Well, what you can say is that we in our country are helping the geopolitics of Europe and other countries by producing LNG and shipping it overseas. We're also helping to lower global emissions because as our natural gas overseas and replaces coal as feedstock for manufacturing processes in Asia, that's going to lower the emission profile of those countries in Asia. You can also say that our economy is stronger because we're creating more jobs in the United States, in the Marcellus, in Haynesville, and West Texas. Wherever that gas is produced, our economy is stronger, and that's because we're becoming energy independent and helping others become energy dependent upon us and not upon Russia. I am getting what I want.
Am I reading this wrong then, Senator? Or are you actually closer than ever with President Biden on energy policy today?
I would argue that it is the mountain has come to Muhammad, perhaps. The president and his team is moving towards a kind of common sense understanding of the nexus between these four issues. And again, I think they were mugged by reality.
Senator, if we could just quickly wrap up with one thing in terms of looking ahead to the summer, the debt ceiling. Does this issue going on with SVB, your concerns about inflation, the volatility we're seeing in the markets, where do the Republicans and Democrats stand right now when it comes to the debt ceiling? Because day X is getting ever so closer.
It is getting closer. It is being brought even closer by the president's policies. Every month that the president pauses student loan debt repayment, that's $5 more billion that is subtracted from the borrowing ability of the federal government. It moves that date even closer. By the way, it also makes inflation worse. It adds $5 billion more to the pockets of people who go out and spend. Now, when the president says, oh, we want a debt ceiling increase without any preconditions, does that include your policies that are making it worse? Can we not ask for you at least to pause the pause? Because what you're doing has moved the debt ceiling crisis, if you will, up by months. You're making it worse, Mr. President. Can you make it better?
I have to ask you lastly about the America's Act legislation, Senator, that you're working on. It's important as an extension, if I can put it this way, to the USMCA that would really focus on localized supply chains between North, Central, and South America. Could you get Democrats to vote for it?
I absolutely can. There has not been a consistent, coherent policy towards the Western Hemisphere since John F. Kennedy. What I'm trying to put forward is such a policy, one in which encourages reshoring of low-cost, low-labor cost industry from Asia back to North America, Central America, and South America. Supply chains in which people have an interrelationship in the hemisphere, therefore creating jobs in Central America, therefore giving a Central American a reason to stay in their country as opposed to immigrating to the United States, making us stronger as opposed to making China stronger, using our environmental standards as opposed to the absence of environmental standards. There's many ways in which our America's Act addresses issues important for our country and important for our world, and I do think we'll get a Democrat on. In fact, I think we already have one, but I'll let that announcement to be made later.
All right. Well, that's for the next time we talk. Senator, thank you for joining us. From Capitol Hill today, Bill Cassidy of Louisiana on Balance of Power.